So I can highlight a few, or I can highlight a couple. And there we have some RTS action starting to happen. Okay, I just wanted to show you something quick. It was brought up in the Discord, and I mentioned it a while back, so I was like, yeah, you know what, I could do that one. If you go on the ecosystem and you look up RTS, there's an RTS selection sample package. And if you go to your Playmaker custom samples, array maker, you can open up this scene and you get this. And this works. There's a few things on it I think are kind of outdated and so forth, but it has a lot of the logic set up for us, and that's cool. That's cool. But I think we can push that, make it a little more useful, right? So for example, there's three kind of parts to this whole thing. Is one, you have this almost this manager here, and this manager, his only purpose is he takes objects and he adds them and subtracts them to this array. So I think the first thing I'd want to do is delete that. Well, I have to unprefab this stuff, I think. Oh, it's not prefabbed, right? For some reason I can't delete it using my delete key. Don't know why. Right, and instead we want to just get owner, a new global variable. We'll say RTS manager, and then let's say RTS space selected, and then let's make another proxy for RTS available. So now we have two proxies, and this thing's a global. So that's kind of change one, right? And this is now our manager. Now the other thing is, on the camera we have the other part, and what this does is it has a very simple, if we push the mouse button down, it comes over and it looks for getting a mouse button up, but it, more importantly, it gets some values from the mouse, and it creates a rec, and then it tells everything to start looking at it, I guess, and I'll explain that in a minute. And it kind of just builds this rec, and then it tells in the canvas this image, this rec image, to copy its borders and its anchor point and all that to where we're clicking, so that we have a visual representation. So that's all good, except I'm going to change this send event broadcast all. I don't like using broadcast alls. If you get too many units, you're going to have issues, right? So this stop and start broadcast, I'm going to change those in a minute. So on the cubes themselves, what do we have? We have on start, nothing happens. But this is where it catches those two broadcasts. We have the start and the stop. So if we start, if it sees the start, it figures out what called this start from the broadcast itself. And we're going to say, okay, well, let's get whatever broadcasted this. Let's get the actual rec built, which will be this thing. And let's get our position and convert our position into screen position and see if we are contained inside this rec. And if true, it comes over here and it does this quick little bool check on itself. And if we aren't contained yet, then this thing fires back with a broadcast to the manager saying, hey, I'm contained. And then the manager adds them, and then he does his scale up. And then he loops, and he just keeps doing this over and over and over every frame. And if we aren't contained, he broadcasts out that we're not selected. So those two broadcasts, like I said, I'm not a big fan of this get event info. I've seen issues with it. So there's numerous things here I would want to change, right? That and scale. I mean, we probably don't want to do scale, but this is what we're going to do. I am going to, actually, I might as well just stay in this scene. I was going to go to a new scene and just bring this stuff with me, but let's create a terrain. And I'm going to add a light because we don't have a light for some reason. Put them out of the way. So we have this. Because if you're actually dealing with RTS, normally you're dealing with 3D. Athena, turn that down. So we're going to want to do that because we want to move units. So the first thing is if we have a manager, we have available and selected. If we more or less prefab this as a template, there's some stuff we can do, right? So I'm going to unpack this cube. We're going to go into it. We're going to do some changes here. We don't want this RTS start and stop getting this event info and stuff. The start and stop events are fine, but they're not going to come from a broadcast, right? So we're not going to get event info. We're going to delete those. The stop is fine there. And this RTS source, well, we know that this is coming from this guy's RTS selector. So I would say, hey, you know what? Why can't we just go like this? Actually, you don't even need to do that. You know what? It'd be even easier than this is this RTS rec is, we can just move that to a global variable because it's something we're going to be using in a global way anyways. Okay, so now we don't need to do this get FSM rec. We can remove that. And instead, this rec, we're just going to make sure that we're coming from the globals. And then it runs its thing, which we're going to do some changes there. And that's probably good for now. And let's say, okay, if we were to not use this broadcast, where is that broadcast? So this is a broadcast send event RTS start to everything, right? And like I said, like I'm not a big fan of that. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this manager just to keep things in one spot. I'm going to add the manager on the same spot as the camera, because I think that'll keep things even less confusing, I think. And then we can just delete that. Right, so if we have, like I said, so all I did is just copy and paste. It was literally the exact same thing. So he's the RTS manager. So if we, for example, get a template, I'm just going to build a template down here. And all it's going to do is array list get next. And we want to say to the RTS available. So we want to talk to everything in this list. We're going to loop, and we're going to have it done. And of course, this is a type game object, so I always use current. I don't know why, it's just kind of force a habit now. So we have our loop and done events. So on the loop, we are going to send event to the current, whichever thing we're talking to in the loop, which I am going to actually drag this in for references. And we're going to say start. All right, now it's current. FSM RTS start. And that's it. When we're done, let's just finish the FSM. Call this the start state. So very, very simple template, right? Really nothing major. So let's just call this RTS start. And I'm just going to deactivate that. We're going to reuse them again for the stopping as well. So here, instead of this broadcast, let's do a run FSM. I'm going to put them in the exact same spot. Somewhere down here anyways. I think it was actually above that one. You could probably put them up in the top part. I don't think it's going to matter that much for this. There, and he's going to tell everything. So we're not broadcasting anymore. So the other thing is, what we would need on these cubes is in the start state. I'm going to make a new start. Is we want to get owner, store ourselves in a variable called self, an array list add.
I'm going outside.
We're talking to the RTS manager. To the available, the thing we're adding is ourself. So when this game starts, he's going to add himself to the manager. Now with that said, if this unit dies, we need to remove him from this list as well. So with that, it's not going to fully work yet, but we'll see. We should see something a little different here, right? So this unit course, it gets itself, it knows the manager is the camera, and it's going to add itself to this list, right? Just that simple. And now in this guy, if I hit a button, he is going to say, he's going to run this, which should tell this guy to start. See, like that. So that works just fine. So like I said, now, oh, I have an error. What's the error here? Oh yeah, we have to make sure that we're doing this, the globals. I gotta change those, right? That's why those is errors, because I changed it to a global. There we go. And then, of course, we want the same thing. Oh. So we'll go back into our little template here to the available, but now we want to send RTS. Oh. Hold on, we're going to re-get the thing. There we go. So RTS stop. And that's going to be from the current. Now we can save this as a template again and call this RTS stop. And now we can delete it from here. Well, now we don't need it there. So now from here, instead of this, we can grab RTS stop. Simple as that. So that will now tell everything that's going to be, that can go into an RTS system to be checking that position, but it's only going to check the things that you want it to check. So the start and stop. Now we have the scale thing, and that's, you know, cool for demonstration, but that's not what we want to do. So we're going to change that too. So here we have is the contained, the bools, and this guy has the selected and the unselected. So what we want to do is get rid of those, get rid of both of those, because on our little camera we have this selected. So kind of like this guy, which actually we can copy him over, only now we're going to say the selected, and then down here array list remove, also from the manager, and from that same list, and we're still talking about ourselves. There we go. So that gets rid of all the broadcasts, right? And as you see now, actually I didn't check which cube that was, which cube this is. It's going to be one of those three. I guess we should figure that out. So that that guy there, right? So he's working, right? So we've changed him, and he is working just fine. The other ones aren't working because they're still on the kind of older system, right? So he is, see, it works just fine. But now we've gotten rid of all the broadcasts, and we have a couple lists that we can now play with. So all right, so how do we convert that into something cool? All right, so first of all, let's go with create something, a character of some type. And I'm also going to add could probably just do a plane. And let's see if I have a texture for this. Where am I going to put this? Where am I going to put this? New folder, I suppose. So we would need a new material. And we want a ring of some type. Some type of ring anyway. You can just draw one in a program, right? Like even, I mean, that one's kind of a thin ring, but that might work just fine. And of course we want it transparent. And let's give that here so we have a ring. And let's give it a color so it looks a little better. Something like that. I'm going to give it an emission actually. Oh, I can't give it an emission. Not with that, unless I use cutout. And okay, so that's there. Now let's obviously we don't want it that size though. Something probably a little closer to that. Right, like if our camera's sitting, say, up here. In fact, let's move the camera up here. That might be big enough. We'll see. I mean, if we gave this... Let's add a layer. What can we give it for a layer? Let's give it asphalt. That doesn't really do anything. There we go. Yeah, it's much more visible when you're not looking at the checkered board. Okay, so this guy, I'm going to copy the FSM off of the cube and stick it onto our newly appointed thing here. I'm actually going to delete all those. No longer need them. We just have this. So let's make a variable. Oh. What am I doing here? We're going to make a variable. It's going to be a type of game object, and it's going to be our, we'll call it our ring. And we'll put it in the input, which means we can see it here. And if we go, take this plane, right there. And we should probably, you know what, I'd say start with it deactivated. Like just on the game object itself, but whatever. We can do it here. That might actually help us in the road with any possible issues. Make sure that ring's deactivated in the start. So, so if we are contained, here we have this scale up. Right? Like we add ourselves to the list, but then we do this scale up. We don't need that scale, right? Not for what we're doing. So let's copy our deactivate ring, paste it, and make it activate. And then here, let's get rid of these scales, paste it, and we'll keep it as deactivate. And the scale up is, we're going to do that same thing. Let's get rid of those. And just copy those, paste it here. Copy this one and paste it here. All right. So now, when we start, the ring should be deactivated. And we should now be able to highlight. And of course, you know, he's not working for us. So let's make sure he's firing. No, he didn't get the start command. So let's see. He got himself, he added himself. And RTS available, he's not there. So he didn't add himself. Why didn't he add himself? Did we? I could have sworn we named it right. Did we named it right? Sure of it. All right, let's just double check that. Copy, because the spelling is so important. It should be just fine. I think what I'll do is I'm going to break that state up. Put a next frame in. Just in case. Let's do that on the first actual playing frame. Right, so now, yeah, now he's there. Okay, so he's in. He's not coming out. All right, so let's see what there is happening. Are we contained? True. That shouldn't be. Oh, I have it on every frame. Or something. Oh, these have a done event. Duh. Alright. Change those to a finished event. Actually, you know what would be even probably. Let's just drag these and put them over into these things. We really don't even need this thing here. We could just go up from there. It's not like it's some big complex thing. All right, because now when this thing should be looping steadily, like every frame. Right, so we're in our idle state, and when we click, it wants to be looping every frame. And we're in, we're out, we're in, we're out. Okay, so now it's working. Right. And same thing with here. We got that done, and it should go to the idle. I mean, not that it's actually hurting anything here. I mean, technically it's fine. Right? I mean, in reality, you could just end it like that. You don't even need this state. We can get rid of that completely too. Clean that up a little bit. So, all right, so we have essentially now, with just some minor adjustments, nothing major, we have a simplistic way that we can talk to units, right? And we know he's selected, he's unselected. Right, and if I right click, nothing happens. It's only when I left click that he comes unselected, which is fine. That's the way you kind of normally have those things. So let's get him to actually do a command. Let's do that. Let's bake a navigation. On our flat little tile here. There we go. And let's take this little guy and give him a nav mesh agent. Make sure it's set good. Yeah, it's fine. Now let's take root motion off. So let's have a FSM, and this could be, say, commands. And for now, it's just going to have a moving command. So we go into our selector. I'm gonna pull it right off of this guy, right? So the left clicking is doing the selection. Let's do a right click here. So I'm gonna copy this guy, change him to the right click, send event, send command. So the first thing we want to do is check how big our selected list is, right? Just call it count and int compare. So if the count is equal to 0, then we have nothing to command. I'll also use the less even though we don't need it, but I'll put it there as a safety. Right, and just go back. There's no point in continuing on if there's nothing to command. We have units, and this will work with units and with buildings and stuff like that too, right? So we have units. So the next thing we'd want to do is to get complex and to figure out if we've clicked on an enemy or a building or a resource or something like that. And this is where we do it, but I'm not going to do that right now. Instead, we're just going to issue a command to move to that point. So how do we want to do that? Let's go into our AI. I need to change his name or else it's going to mess me up. So we have a command or commands. So let's get a command. Let's call it move to. And we're going to get event property. We'll call it the move, call it a vector 3. We have a new destination. We can now agent set destination to new destination. So a few more things we can add to that to make that a little more solid, but we'll get to that down the road. So we need to figure out what that destination is. So the easiest thing to do is mouse pick. We want to raycast from the mouse. We're going to get our point. You can do a layer mask on this. We don't need it right now. Let's make sure we're going to hit something. And then let's make a template actually. So we want to array list get next. And we want to talk to the selected. And we have two events, our loop and done. And again, type current. or type game object. We use a current variable. So we have loop and done. In our done, we do the finish event, or finish FSM. In the loop, all we want to do is set event property. We'll call it move. Type vector3, and we need to give it some data. So this thing needs an input. A vector3. We'll call it move position, and it is a input. So we're going to give it move position. Oh, and then we need to send the event. So we're going to send the event to our AI, to the commands to move to. It's actually our current. It finishes and it goes. That's it. So let's save template. Alright, so let's get rid of the him. We don't need him. Back up here. So we have done this. We should probably check this vector to make sure it's valid before we send it, but for now we are going to just send it. So here is RTS move to. Position we want to move to is our point, and on finish we'll use a finished event to come back over here. So now we have, if I click, nothing happens. Oh, right, I'm clicking, I can draw, I come over here and highlight them, and I right click, he goes. If I left click and right click over here, nothing happens. But if I highlight him again, click over here, he goes over here. Click over here, he goes over there. Okay, cool. So you might want to also add in here some sort of effect for wherever you click, right? So for example, we have where is where's some effects? There's some effects here. So let's say could use something like that. We just kind of want to we can even just use an explosion, I guess. I mean, it would give us the idea of what's happening. How about something like that? So let's create a quick little pool. And let's add a FSM. Let's take, what the hell was that thing? That was a magic something. Power draw, power pickup, money, notes, magic blast. It's one of those. Good enough. So here, let's add a FSM on this guy first, and just say wait, and give him now 3 seconds. Control click, give him a finished, and pooler destroys self. Okay, cool. Let's go to our RTS and prefab him in here. Original prefab. Delete that one. Up here, let's make a pool. And just drag him in. Let's call him Mark. We'll give him 10. Sure, he can grow if we decide to go nuts with clicking, I suppose. And we go to our camera and we say, okay, when we're doing this, let's pooler spawn. Let's do it after our mouse pick. We want to spawn a mark at our point. Might even want to play a sound. All right, cool. The other thing we want to see is, let's give this guy, what do we have for an animator? Just kind of anything, I guess. We have a move float controlling a blend tree with idle, walk and run. Perfect, that's all we need. So just a float into a blend tree. The rest of it we don't need, we don't care about. Cool. So let's just quickly come over here and make another FSM. We'll just call his movement. And we're going to get agent velocity. And we're just going to get the magnitude. And set animator float. Move to magnitude every frame. Nice and simple. Nothing crazy. So now we have our little soldier standing there. We click and we right click, and now he's moving. And we have our little effect here saying this is where you want to move to. Okay, cool. So let's just quickly, before we end the video, let's make a few more. There we go. So I can highlight a few, or I can highlight a couple. And there we have some RTS action starting to happen. Now they're going to huddle together like that, and that's kind of normal. If we actually extend this out and give this more of like a stopping distance of like 2.5 maybe. There's some other things there that we could do when we're going to set the position. Like if we're moving a whole whack of units, right, based on the count, instead of telling everyone to move to that one specific point, use that count as a way to extend a float variable, and use the float variable to add a randomness to a position. So for example, if you had 50 guys, if I were to click here, it would randomize a position in, say, like a box like this, and give a random position to each unit in there. But I'm not worried about that right now. That's not here nor there. So for now, there is the basics of how we start to get something like this set up. And that, like I said, that's based on the package that's actually in the ecosystem for the RTS. Modified, of course, because, you know, I'm me and I have to modify everything and change everything and push everything to insane limits. So, hopefully you learned something. I'll talk to you later.